Hormetic stress, for people listening, is transient metabolic stress that stimulates the system, our body, to make adaptations that ultimately increase its resistance to future exposures to stressors. And not only to the stressor it was exposed to, but to a broad range of other stressors. It literally builds resilience into our body at the cellular level. And there's a few important things to understand about hormetic stress. One is that our biology requires it. This is not something that we go from like, okay, so we're at optimal health, and then we can choose to expose ourselves to hormetic stressors to go to sort of a superhuman level of function. Your biology literally requires exposure to hormetic stressors to maintain normal function. In other words, if you don't have these hormetic stressors built into your life, you will necessarily have abnormal cell function, and you will have the generation of disease over time, certainly symptoms like fatigue. And the way to understand this is it's easy if you've ever broken a bone, if you've ever broken an arm or a leg and you got a cast on for 8 weeks, and then you went to the doctor and you got that cast on off, you look down at your leg and it's half the size as the other one. Why? The answer is because that muscle wasn't being stimulated, it wasn't being challenged. And because it wasn't being challenged, the body, which is basically ruthless, it only cares about survival. So the body basically says, I guess we don't need that stuff anymore. And it's a liability for survival. It's not helping us survive. It's just all this energetically costly tissue that's consuming energy, but is contributing nothing to our survival. Let's get rid of it. Well, what we don't see outwardly, like we can see with muscles in this way, is that same process is happening internally at the cellular level with our mitochondria. And if we are not challenging them, if we are not stimulating them through these hormetic stress challenges on a regular basis, they literally shrink and shrivel and die off, and we lose our mitochondria. And it's been shown this is not a small percentage. I'm not talking about 10%, 20% loss of your mitochondria. I'm talking about the difference between, well, I'll give you some specific figures. We know from studying athletes, for example, exercise physiologist Inigo San Millan studies both athletes, endurance athletes, and he studies diabetics, overweight diabetics in his clinic. So the general population, people who do lots of exercise. The athletes, the endurance athletes, have literally 400% more mitochondria in their cells. This is your cellular engine. This is the system in your body, inside of your cells, that is responsible for producing the energy that powers your cells. They have 400% more. So another way of saying this is, and not looking at sort of the extremes of athletes, but we know among regular people, they lose about 10% of their mitochondrial capacity with each decade of life. And that sounds like a small amount, but the average 70-year-old has lost 75% of their mitochondrial capacity. Now, the response to that might be, well, geez, that really sucks that we lose so much of our mitochondrial capacity as we get older. But sort of aging sucks in that way. But actually, this is not a natural product of aging. This is a product of the modern lifestyle that is devoid of hormetic stress. And we know that because when we look at 70-year-olds who are lifelong exercisers, they don't lose 75% of their mitochondrial capacity. They have the same mitochondrial capacity as a young adult. So this is literally the reduction. It's like, imagine you started with a Ferrari, and then over the course of a few decades, you now have a moped engine under the hood of your Ferrari.